Today we're going to finish this Moth flash sheet. Let's go. I've already completed the sketches for these designs. If you'd like to have an in-depth look at my sketching process, my previous video will show you everything you need to know. So for this one, we're just going to jump straight into the line work. I am using 3 different line weights: 0.8mm for the outside, 0.5 for the more prominent inner details, and a 0.2 for the finer details in the body and the wings. When doing lines, it's important to do it in one smooth motion. For the longest lines, it's not really possible to do them in one stroke, so I need to break them up into sections. Knowing where to start and where to stop is crucial. That little bit of pre-planning before starting the line helps quite a lot. The best approach is to use corners or intersections of lines as your points. Doing it this way helps to mask where you've stopped in the line. In saying that, this is where my designs are flawed. Some of these outer lines are super long with no intersections. In these areas, I drew the lines as long as I could, focusing on staying smooth. As soon as I reached an area of the line that was uncomfortable, I picked up my pen, readjusted my position, and carefully picked up from where I stopped. This is definitely not the best way to do it. I would recommend taking those stopping points into account when sketching. If I were to do this again, I would add more details to break up those long lines. Moving to the smaller lines, the smaller the pen, the harder it is to create a nice smooth line. Thick lines will mask any little wobbles and inconsistencies, while the thin lines will show every little bump. I also find that the nibs on the smaller pens wear out super quickly. Because they are so small, they can bend and warp easily. Sometimes when I'm drawing a line, it will come out too thick, but then the next one will come out too thin. I work with it the best I can, trying to keep the angle of the nib consistent, but going around curves can make that difficult. It is what it is. Now that that is done, I can move on to transferring it to my watercolor paper. I cut out my lines so I can arrange it on my light box. I did it this way because I didn't want to scan and stitch together an A3 piece of paper, but yeah, you could debate that this is the more time-consuming option. And really it is. I use my light box to trace my lines onto my paper, so now I'm ready to color. I started off with black ink. Not all of these designs will use black, but there are a few that will. I quickly realized that this was not a good idea. This is a cheaper watercolor paper, and it does hold watercolor quite well, but not ink. As soon as I went to blend it out with water, it just started to bleed everywhere, and I was not happy. I decided to restart. I also wasn't happy with the layout as it came out lopsided, so I decided to fix that too. While I was at it, I decided to throw my "I want to do everything traditionally" mindset out of the window, put my sketches onto my iPad so I could make sure that they were symmetrical. I probably should have just done that from the start, but I'm really enjoying doing everything the old-fashioned way at the moment. Once these designs were 100% symmetrical, I printed them, then I used my lightbox again, put them onto my watercolor paper again. Now they're all slightly bigger too. Earlier, I said if I were to do this again, I would add more lines to give myself more stopping points. I did not do that. Look at me not following my own advice. Learn from my mistakes. Okay, now back to where we were with the colouring. Since I know this watercolour paper is good with watercolour, I did my black with watercolour instead of the ink. I initially thought I would approach this whole piece colour by colour, doing the black on all the moths, then doing the next colour on them all, then the next colour, and so on. But I changed my mind. I thought it would be better to do each moth individually instead. That helps me figure out that individual design rather than shifting my focus between different drawings. Lately, I've been using a water brush for my paintings. They hold water in the barrel and then you squeeze them to release more moisture directly into the brush. They're good for travel, but sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to control the amount of water. I always have a piece of paper towel nearby to dab off any excess moisture or to clean off any paint. I like vibrant colours when I do use colour. I'm not the type of person to use light washes. I want the colour to punch you in the face. To do this, I load up my brush with as much paint as I can. Sometimes I'll do a second layer if I have too much water in my brush. For blending, I will place my paint on the edge where I want the most colour. Then I clean my brush, use a small amount of water to blend it into the paper. I am using the side of my round brush, placing the tip of the brush in the wet paint, using the side of the brush to place the water for it to blend into. If I'm too slow and the paint has already dried, no worries. I layer on a fresh coat and use that to blend out instead. Sometimes the blends aren't as nice, but I work in sections so it's not really an issue. That becomes a problem on larger artworks that have bigger areas of blending. This is how I approach all of my colours. I have areas of solid colour and then areas of where I blended the paper. If I'm blending two colours together, I'm still using the same technique, I'm just having the blended out sections overlap each other. Colour theory is something that I struggle with, if I'm being honest. I learned how to draw with just a regular old pencil, so I feel like I've wired my brain to think in grayscale. It's more comfortable for me, and I only need to focus on light and shadow. With colour, I need to focus on light and shadow, which colours to use, how the colours blend together, what colours look good next to each other, what do I use for my shadows that don't muddy up the other colours, and just so many other things. I'm using black for the shadows in the designs that have black in the reference, but for the others I'm using colours in the same family. Maybe not the most dynamic, but it's a safe bet. It keeps the colours looking bright while ensuring I have the contrast between light and dark tones. The moth that was most daunting to tackle was the centre one. In the reference, it's just a white moth. Instead of switching to grayscale, I decided to use blue tones and kind of just do my own thing with it. I still wanted to keep it light overall, but I wanted to make sure I had enough colour and contrast to fit in with the other designs. And it is the centerpiece after all. Once I got going with it, it wasn't difficult at all. Because I'm not going for realism, I can take a more creative approach to make it look how I would like it to. Speaking of my references, I chose them because I like the shape and patterns of the moths as well as the vibrant colours. I don't know what types they are, and I'm 95% sure that the one in the bottom left is actually a butterfly, but I don't mind. The idea was to have them front on and outstretched to mirror the look of a pinned insect display. The decision to use this particular watercolour set was because of the beautiful colours that it has, and I don't think I would be able to replicate that bright green with any other paints or pencils. I did layer the colours in areas to push the hues a little bit, but this set has such a large range of paint that it makes the colouring process a lot more straightforward. The original plan was to keep playing with the Inktense pencils with layering the coloured pencil on top. Some of these colours just wouldn't be possible to mix. For bright and vibrant colours, can't really mix them with generic paint and pencil sets. These colours come across best from something that is pre-mixed. Sure, you can mix something similar, but it will lack that same vibrancy. These last two drawings benefited from having those pre-mixed colours. The references had the most vibrant and unique colours. I'm not the worst at colour mixing, but I'm no expert. I don't think I would have been able to achieve these colours on my own, and anything I can do to make colour work easier for me, I will do. I think I've rambled on for long enough, so here is the final artwork. Thank you for watching. If you want to see an in-depth explanation of my sketching process, you can watch this video here.